Let's talk about derivation. In this short lecture, we will define affixal derivation, introduce different types of derivational affixes, and demonstrate how derivation works in English and some other languages. Consider this. We have this word, help. Its synonym is the word assistance or aid. It is a noun. But if we add the part less to it, we now have a word that means without help, and it is an adjective. We changed the meaning of our original word by adding a small segment to it, and we changed its part of speech. We can make another adjective from the noun help by adding the part full instead of less, and that adjective would mean useful, handy, or willing to help. If we add the part ness to the adjective helpful, we can turn it back into a noun, but one with a different meaning from the noun help. This noun means the quality of being helpful. But if we add a different part, un, in front of the adjective helpful, we create an adjective again, but with the meaning opposite of helpful. By adding prefixes, morphemes that come before the roots, and suffixes, morphemes that come after the roots, we create new words that have new meanings and can be different parts of speech. This process of creating a new word by adding affixes, suffixes, and prefixes to the already existing stem is called derivation. Affixes, that is, bound morphemes that attach to the stem, are divided into prefixes, suffixes, infixes, and circumfixes. Prefixes are morphemes that attach to the front of the word before the root or stem, as in happy, unhappy. Suffixes attach at the end after the root or stem, as in happy, happiness. The English language only uses prefixes and suffixes, but other languages may have two other types of affixes. Infixes are morphemes that break into the middle of the root, so to say. They're common in Indonesian, Malay, or Tagalog, for example. Let's take the word gembang, which means bloated in Malay. It is an adjective. To make a noun that means a bubble out of it, speakers insert an infix, L, after the first consonant of the root, creating the word gelembang. Circumfixes are two-parters. They always function together, but one part attaches before the root and the other after. Old English used to have them, but they disappeared by the middle to end of the Middle English period. German, on the other hand, retained them, so in German, to form a passive participle, we add ge to the beginning of the verb root, and either n or t to the end. For example, the verb klempen means to clamp, and the word geklempt, clamped. In German, however, this process is inflectional rather than derivational. It makes a new form of the verb, not a new word, and we will talk about inflection in the next lecture. Derivation in English is accomplished mainly through suffixes and prefixes. English derivational suffixes change both the part of speech of the word and its meaning. For example, if we add the suffix able to the verb believe, we create an adjective meaning possible to believe. If we add the suffix ment to the verb amuse, we create a noun meaning pleasure, fun, or something that amuses us. English prefixes can only be derivational, never inflectional. When they're added to the stem or root, they change the meaning of the word, but not its part of speech. For example, adding un to the adjective believable creates another adjective with the opposite meaning, not believable. Adding re to the verb live creates another verb, to live again. In English, words can have multiple suffixes and prefixes added to the same root, creating affixed stems. For example, the word carelessness is formed by adding the suffix less to the root care. This creates an affixed stem careless, to which we then add the suffix ness to create the noun carelessness. The English word unpremeditated has two prefixes and two suffixes. Its root is the Proto-Indo-European root med, which meant take appropriate measures. We don't use it as a separate word in modern English, but we do have it in other words like medicine and mediator. In any case, the suffix itate added to this ancient root creates the verb meditate, which means kind of think about something in a focused way. Then the prefix pre, meaning before, creates a new verb, premeditate, to think of ahead of time. The suffix ed makes a passive participle, premeditated, that acts like an adjective. And then the prefix un creates an adjective with the opposite meaning, not thought of in advance. Now let's look at some examples of derivation in Spanish. Let's take the root liber, meaning free. This root cannot function in Spanish as a word, but it can add different suffixes to create different parts of speech. Adding the suffix ar to it makes it into a verb, liberar, to free, to liberate. Adding the suffix al makes it into an adjective, liberal, free, liberal. Adding the suffix tad makes into a noun, libertad, liberty, freedom. Roots, of course, are productive, but prefixes and suffixes are often productive too. We can use the same prefix with its consistent meaning to form multiple words, both in English and in Spanish, of course. The prefix sobre, above and over, added to the verb salir, creates the verb sobresalir, to stand out. Adding it to the verb cargar creates the verb sobrecargar, overload. Adding it to the noun cama, bed, creates another noun, sobrecama, a coverlet. Note that in Spanish, like in English, prefixes do not typically change the part of speech, only the word's meaning. Let's recap. Derivation is a process of creating new words. When we create new words, we can make new parts of speech, new meanings, or both. Derivation is achieved mostly through affixation. Affixes include prefixes, suffixes, infixes, and circumfixes. In English, prefixes and suffixes are common, but we do not have any productive infixes, except for a certain expletive we sometimes insert in the middle of stems, or circumfixes. Derivation is a productive process. We create new words all the time. In the next lecture, we'll talk about another morphological process, inflection.